Welcome to DBC. Today we are beginning with Toxic Charity by Robert Lupton. And the tagline here is how churches and charities hurt those they help and how to reverse it. We're going to cover the first two chapters of the book. So the first chapter is called The Scandal. And this is the idea that most of us know that people from the United States, so the frame here is for Americans and American charities. I'm sure it could do with, let's say, the rest of the West as well. Hopping in. So we as Americans are very generous with charitable giving. He reports that 90% of people in the United States are somehow involved in what he calls charity, which I'm guessing is nonprofits, whether that be donating or volunteering or working. But much of that money, his claim is that much of that money and that time is either wasted, number one, or actually harms the people it's targeting to help. So an example of each, harm. A main thesis of the book is that when we do for those that are in need what they have the capacity to do for themselves, we actually disempower them. We take the action and externalize it to ourselves from them, and that this may be the kindest way to destroy people. We turn them into beggars in handout lines. Not good. That's the harm piece. The waste piece, which will come up again and again, is that the money spent by, let's say, one campus ministry trip. So Lupton comes from a religious charity background, so a lot of his examples are from those, and they work really well. So the money spent by one campus ministry trip to cover the costs to, let's say, flying to Nicaragua to repaint an orphanage. His claim is that money, the amount of money spent to do that would be sufficient, first of all, to hire 2 local people from the community to paint the orphanage, to hire 2 full-time teachers, and to buy new uniforms for all the students in the school. So a ton of waste and then harm in other spots. And there's a metaphor he uses between charity and medicine that runs throughout the book. So he, paralleling the Hippocratic oath, he has an oath of compassionate service, which has about 6 points, which I'll lay out for you right now. We already mentioned, never do for the poor what they have or could have the capacity to do for themselves. Limit one-way giving, just blanket, like here's $1 million, to emergency situations, so like natural disasters and stuff like that only. Strive to empower the poor through employment, lending, and investing, and using grants sparingly to reinforce achievements, perhaps, as an incentive system. To subordinate, of course, always, this seems to go without saying, but to subordinate our own self-interests to the interests of those that are being served. Listen closely to what the people that we're working with are saying, and he doesn't go into it more, but he makes a really interesting tweak here. He says, especially to what they are not saying. So maybe things that they're not asking for, we might assume that we want to give, but that's not what they're interested in, And of course, like the Hippocratic Oath, do no harm. That's the opening chapter. So pretty big claims, lots of stuff going on there, and there'll be plenty to reinforce it coming up. Chapter 2 is called The Problem with Good Intentions. And his answer to that, what's the problem with good intentions? Aren't they good enough? The problem with good intentions are unintended consequences. He has a story of a well that was built for a Honduran village where a church group went down, had all their engineers come in, build a well, get it all set up, go home, and they come back a year later to the village to find that the well is broken, the pump doesn't work anymore, and the villagers were waiting for them to come back to fix it. And this happened several times. So this being situation A, versus the village residents building their own well, maybe with the expertise of engineers to explain to them what's going on, but to build their own well and be taught how to manage it so that it turns into a money-generating asset. So that if it breaks, they can fix it themselves and they can use it to supply water not only to their village, but to other villages around them, which can be done. And back to the mission trips, a couple of numbers that he provides is that in 2005, which is well over a decade now, and he claims this is a growth industry, 2005, 1,600,000 American church members went to and spent $2.4 billion on church aid trips. And that these trips, according to him, have no lasting change. Instead, what ends up happening is they weaken the people that are being served, which in that first example of having them wait to have the well fixed for their American partners to come down and fix it for them. It fosters dishonest relationships. It erodes their work ethic because things are done for them. So there's like, oh, that's how things work, is that rich people do things for us, and then that's where it comes from. And it deepens dependency, which is all sort of tied in the same thing. Most work, he claims, that is done by volunteers in international charities could be better done by locals, in not only better done in less time and with better results. The amount of money that is spent on service trips is extravagant when compared with the monetary value of the work done. And this is kind of a shift in perspective he has, where it's like, instead of thinking like, oh, we feel good, we pat ourselves on the back, we all flew down to Nicaragua to paint a barn, aren't we great? He says to think of it in this sense as a business. Like, what if you were looking at it from a business point of view, and you need, so let's say that the barn does need to be painted. How, in what way would it make sense for a business to fly 20 people halfway around the world or a quarter way around the world to do something that people there could already do? Like, monetarily, it makes no sense. And he keeps pointing to micro lending as an example, which is a situation where reasonable, small volume, low interest loans are given to people in developing or poor countries so that they can build their own businesses or grow their own businesses. And there's a really high, so the default rate on those loans is extremely low, like 3-4% tops. So, and then this goes along with the idea of getting them to work for themselves, as opposed to just, here's a bunch of money for your well. Like, you don't need, just here's a handout. And the idea is to navigate away from doing things for poor people to doing things with them. And the key there really is building relationships. And that's what we're going to start with next time. Thanks for watching.